So we started a couple weeks ago this series we're doing on relationships. And what I said at the very beginning, that my experience working in addiction over the last 15 years has been that relationships messes up a lot of people in recovery. And it's not for me to stand up here and try to beat you with a stick and tell you to smarten up. It's to help you understand why this is such a dangerous area for people. And so I've been just laying a foundation in understanding both what set me up for unhealthy relationships and what does a healthy relationship look like. And last week I told you we're going to start talking about what is love. And my experience, again, for most people, they've never really experienced growing up unconditional love. They have a little bit of an idea, but they're not sure. And they don't really believe that anybody would truly love them if they got to know them. And so there's lots of confusion around what is love. And they really don't know how do you show love to others in a healthy way. So I want to focus on question 2 tonight. How do you express healthy love in a healthy way? And then we're going to talk about what is love the next time that I'm talking to you. Tonight what I want to do is something that's been around about 25 years. A psychologist by the name of Dr. Gary Chapman wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages. And what the concept basically says is that we're individually wired so that certain expressions of love make us feel loved. Other types of expressions of love can be shown to us, but they leave us cold. And we're also wired that we like to show love to others in a certain way that is natural to us. So let me explain it. I grew up in a family where I quickly realized that I felt most loved by my parents when they stopped doing what they were doing and just focused in on how I was doing and encouraged me to share deeper stuff about what was going on inside of me. So that focused time and deep sharing left me feeling very loved. My wife grew up in a family where they never shared deeply about anything, but she felt loved when each evening they would have fun together as a family. They would wrestle, they would play board games, card games, laugh a lot, and that made her feel loved. Now you can imagine when we got married. I'm trying to have deep conversations, and she's trying to wrestle and have fun. We're missing each other. So the point is we're talking 2 different love languages. So for our relationship to work, she had to learn my love language, and I had to learn her love language. We both have done that. We're both fairly good at it, but it's like a second language. So I've learned to have fun, and I can do it well, but I still gravitate towards that deep conversation. And so that is what I mean by love languages. Each of us will have our own style. So what I want to do is give you the 5 love languages. Then I want to show the issues that complex trauma adds to understanding and putting the love languages into effect. And hopefully it'll be very helpful to you and give you a lot of insight. Most of us have a combination of the different love languages. Very few of us will just have one of the love languages as our sole love language. We might have a blend of 2 or 3. So you can be keeping track of what you think yours might be, what you think your children's love language might be, what makes them feel loved. and your partner's love language if you have one. So the first thing is words of affirmation. That can be, I love you, or it can just be very encouraging words where you're validated, where you're told what makes you special, and you're encouraged in that. It can be verbal, but it can also be written notes, cards that are left for you that just express appreciation and love to you. Second one is gifts. So most of us go to chocolates and roses and all of that, and that can be a love language. But for many people, it's where somebody that loves you would give you a gift of money because they know you need money. And that just means so much to you. Or they might pay a bill for you or help you out so that you can have a night out. They'll pay for you to go out. That kind of giving of a gift that is very helpful and meaningful to the person. The third one is acts of service or making a sacrifice for the person. So this would be, let's say you're in a relationship and your partner is just really run down and not feeling very well, and you would say, let me take the kids out tonight and give you a break. Or let me just clean the house up for you. You just take the night off. Now, you might hate cleaning the house, but you make that sacrifice because it is necessary and meaningful to that person. So those kinds of acts of sacrifice that help a person going through whatever situation communicates love. So what I want you to see is that you look at all five are different ways that you communicate love in different situations. Number 4, focus quality time. Now, if you think about what I shared to you about my wife and about me, both of us have a love language of focus quality time. We both like when parents stop what they're doing and give full attention to the person. She just liked it in the fun version. I liked it in the deep conversation version. But both were focused quality time. And then the 5th one is physical affection. Now that can come as non-sexual, a hug, a massage, snuggling, that kind of thing, or sexual. And we're going to come back to these 5 because complex trauma adds layers of complication to it. Let me just make a few observations first. Number 1, love is not just a love language. Do you realize that an abuser can do all 5 of those things when they first meet you? They can say all the right things. They can give you gifts. They can make great sacrifices for you. They can listen to you with rapt attention, and they can just give you a back rub that goes nowhere. They do it till they got you, and then they stop. So you can use all 5 of those as a way to manipulate people. Or another way to say it is this: true love is the right action from the right motive. So is the person doing this dressing up their selfishness like they love me in order to get something? Because that's not love. But that's what people who learn to manipulate others take these 5 love languages and learn how to manipulate people with them. But it's all about getting what they want. It's selfishness dressed up by love. So love is the right action and the right motive, but it's even more than that. Love basically is a person that has character. They're honest. They're respectful. They're trustworthy. You could have a person who does the 5 love languages to you, but cheats on you and lies to you all the time. They don't love you. Love goes deeper than the languages. Love is a character thing. Okay, now let me start bringing in complex trauma. The first thing that, and I've talked about it, is that people from complex trauma, they don't know what love is, true, genuine, healthy love. And so they don't even sometimes know what makes them feel loved or how they are most comfortable in expressing love. They don't know their love language. So there's a bit of a gap in their awareness, their understanding of themselves. Secondly, out of complex trauma, I don't know who I am. I don't know myself, and so I don't even know all about what I need and what kind of love would mean anything to me. So what I have found with people coming out of complex trauma is give yourself time to learn this about yourself. So I don't expect you to leave tonight and know your love language perfectly. You might leave tonight and go, that was interesting, but I really don't know what my love language is. Be patient. Over time, you will gradually figure it out. Okay? Then the next thing is to understand this. We all like to love in a way that makes us comfortable. So I like to have a deep conversation with people. I'm very comfortable. That's my little ocean that I'm good in swimming at. When I first went to have fun with my wife, that pushed me way out of my comfort zone. And so part of learning your children's love language, your partner's love language, is going to be understanding I'm going to feel awkward at first. It's going to push me out of my comfort zone. And so I might show love and then feel very insecure and self-conscious about it afterwards. That's okay. That takes time, and you will gradually begin to learn it. Okay. There we go. When it comes to your children, just think of yourself. I grew up with 3 other siblings. So if you were in a 4-children family, and let's say your dad or your mom said, I love all my kids the same. Now, I love all my kids the same, but I love them all differently. Do you see the difference? So if you grew up in a family where your dad just said, I love all my kids the same, and let's say he was just very much, he said, I'll give you a gift once in a while, and he gave everyone a gift, and everybody got treated the same. Do you realize that one of your siblings might have felt loved and the other 3 not? Because what that gift might have been that one child's love language, but if it wasn't the other 3 children's love language, they all grew up not feeling loved. And so the challenge in parenting is I can't just say I'm going to love my kids the way I feel comfortable or the way I want to be loved. I have to get to know my kids so well that I go, wow, this one needs acts of service. This one needs deep conversations. This one needs fun and lots of physical hugs. This one, you can't give them a hug no matter how hard you try, so don't even go there because they'll get angry. Learn their love language. Okay, so let me take complex trauma now and go back through the 5 love languages. So let's say your gift or your love language is verbal, words of affirmation. Now here's how complex trauma can mess that up. Some of you grew up and you never once in your life heard your parents say, I love you. That just was not done. Could be because they were very reserved, could be because they felt uncomfortable, or because they were just messed up big time. What I have seen is how that affects a child who grows up never hearing that. Couple options. Number 1, you could go to that person now as an adult and say, I love you, and you would make them squirm. They would feel so awkward hearing that because they didn't know what to do with that. That's not part of their world. Or for others, You could say, I love you, and it was like water off a duck's back. It means nothing to it. It's empty words that just, they don't have a category to put it in. Or some grow out of it, and they're hungry to hear, I love you. And the first guy that says, I love you, they're chasing them around, and they're going, oh, finally somebody is saying, I love you. And they're very vulnerable to get into bad relationships. Then the other scenario is, you grew up hearing it all the time, once a day, twice a day, many times a day, but it wasn't followed through with actions. So you got lots of words, but then they hit you. Then they neglected you. Then they abused you. And so what can happen for a person now, if you get in a relationship and your partner says, I love you, couple options. Number one, means nothing. You go, don't say it, do it. Live it. Or it could actually push your anger button. As soon as you hear it, it just makes you angry. Because you think your partner's saying it just like your parents said it, empty words. Or they're trying to manipulate me. So those are some of the options. Beyond that, complex trauma makes the focus looking for negative. And so what is really important, whether you have the love language of words and affirming words or not, is that if you're going to have a healthy relationship, you need to learn a little bit of this language. Because you need to learn to have a relationship that spends more time validating and affirming and encouraging than criticizing and tearing down. And that's a challenge, because if you grew up in complex trauma, you're really good at finding negative. You're really good at not validating. And so you need to learn that. Okay, what happens if your love language is gifts? What can happen if you grew up in complex trauma? If that is your love language, usually a tendency, because you want to do that to everybody, so you want everybody to know you love them, and so you go out and buy gifts, even if you can't afford it. And then you hear about it later. At home, we can't even buy food for the kids because you keep spending our money on gifts for your friends. So sometimes you can be impulsive. You go through a store and you go, oh, my friend would love that, I'll buy it. And you don't even go, can I afford it? You just go, I got to buy this for my friend. So you need to be aware of that. The second thing is, some of you grew up with a little bit of money and you used gifts to buy friends. So you gave people gifts so they would like you and want to hang out with you. And it's going to be important for you, if you have this love language, to learn to use it not to manipulate people to be your friend. And then the other thing is, many of you grew up in homes where you got I'm sorry gifts. So dad abused you, and the next day you're getting an ice cream cone or a new toy or something. That was his I'm sorry gift. If that's what you grew up in, you could have, again, hot buttons that are triggered if somebody, your partner especially, gives you a gift, because you go, okay, what are you trying to apologize for? What did you do now? And you just go there in your head. Okay, acts of service. Some of you in complex trauma or religious homes or kind of very ethnic homes grew up where there's very rigid roles for mom and dad. So dad was the breadwinner and he did all the outside chores. Mom did all the inside chores. It is going to be important, if you want a healthy relationship, to throw some of that away and say we need to be there for each other. And we need to learn how to help each other out and not walk around if you're a guy and say, oh, that's women's work, as if you're better than that. So that's just for you to be aware of. One of the things that comes out of complex trauma is I don't feel value in myself being who I am. So I have to get my sense of value by doing for others. And so you will be attracted to serve other people and make sacrifices and do things for them. And some of it can come from a very good place, but some of it can come from this proves I have value. And that can be a dangerous thing for you. Next thing. It is very easy to serve other people who then validate you and say, you're such a wonderful friend, compared to serving your children at home and you get zero validation. And you go, you know what? I'm going to serve my friends and neglect my kids. That, I find many people in recovery fall into that. Your first area for serving really has to be your kids. Then if you have time above that, you can branch out beyond that. And then the danger in recovery is serving people too much so that you do their recovery for them. You keep them sober. That'll wear you out. And they won't learn anything from that. And it is going to be really hard and important to realize I must learn when service must stop. When service becomes enabling to other people. Because if I'm doing something for them that's keeping them irresponsible and they're not doing it for themselves, I'm hurting them and I am preventing them from growing up. Next one. Focus quality time. Healthy relationships. You do stuff together and you do stuff apart. Codependent relationships, you do everything together, and that's not necessarily healthy. And so focus quality time does not mean you say to your partner, you can have no other friends but me. You got to spend every available moment with me and not out there. That's not what I'm talking about. It is learning to stop what you're doing and be present to your kids, to your partner, to your friends. It is learning to communicate honestly from a deeper place. And that is going to be something that you need to learn because you don't naturally have that. So one of the practical things, I encourage you to have a date night with your kids, one individually. Give them that focused time. That'll let you get to know them. That'll let you listen to them. Now, don't take them on a date and then be on your phone while they're trying to talk to you. You have to be emotionally present and available to them. Also, you need balance. I love deep talks. But if somebody wants to have a deep talk with me every time they see me, I get annoyed. It's like, give me a break. I need deep talks. I need deep talks, but I need superficial talks once in a while. I need fun. I need just to relax. So you have to find a balance. And then some people who are intimacy addicts, that is, they try to get in a deep conversation with everybody they meet on the first day they meet them. And so they're trying to drag this conversation down so they can pour their heart out. And I go, whoa, you can't have a deep talk with people till they feel safe with you. And that takes time. And so you have to be very patient if you have this love language to not go there too quickly, but to gradually develop a safe environment where people can share a little deeper and a little deeper and connect at a deeper level. So those are some of the complexities of that focus time. The last one, physical touch. Now this is probably the trickiest of them all, especially in light of complex trauma. So remember I said there's non-sexual touching and there's sexual touching. For most guys that come out of complex trauma, do you know what non-sexual touching is? It's called foreplay. It is always going to sexual touching. And that's tricky. Because if you're with a partner that wants to snuggle and watch a movie and have you give them a massage, and that's it for the night, you better learn to control the sexual part. What would happen if your partner has lived with you and every time you've rubbed her back, it's her cue that you want something tonight? How would she feel the next time you rub her back? She'd be annoyed at you. You're showing her physical touch for what you can get out of it. And so the reality with this love language is if your partner just needs non-sexual touching, please learn that. That is not foreplay in her mind. And if it is in your mind, then she is going to not want you to touch her at all, and there will be little sex in her world for you. So it will really backfire on you, and it will do a lot of damage to the relationship. So I always laugh when I teach this final one, because I just watch the guys and they go, oh no, I'm screwed. Now what am I going to do? So let me give you this, guys, just so you don't leave here without any tools. Do you want to know what foreplay is to a woman? It's you genuinely love her 24/7. You give her your attention. You're emotionally available to her. And you go, oh, she yaps so much. Well, good, get used to it. You got to learn her love language, and don't just demand that she likes your love language. And that means moving out of your comfort zone. That means beginning to do stuff that you don't naturally enjoy. But you want to know something? The more you do it, the more you'll be okay with it. You might even start to enjoy it. But that is foreplay. That is love through the rest of the day. So don't ignore your partner all day and just talk business and say hi and bye, and then come home from work and say, I want some. What is it you don't understand? She's thinking. That's not how I work. Okay, enough on that. Tonight, I want to carry on with a bit of what we talked about last week in this love thing. So last week we talked about the challenge for many people coming into recovery who start to think about the spiritual component to life and to recovery, where they go, I'm not sure God, whoever He is, would love me after all that I've done, because I'm just so screwed up on all of those things. And so we talked about that last week as far as God's love for you, and I want to just carry that a bit further tonight. And I want to tell you a story that many of you will relate to, because the woman we're going to talk about many of you would be in very similar circumstances. So it's in the Bible in John chapter 4, and it's about a Samaritan woman who was at a well that Jesus was at. So let me just read a little bit to you, and then I'll explain it and develop it for you. So it says, Jesus left Judea. And what that means, it's the southern part of Israel, right down close to Egypt. And He returned to Galilee, which is in the northern part of Israel. And to get through that, right in the middle of Israel, was this country called Samaria. and it split the nation in a north part and a south part, and Samaria in the middle. So it says he had to go through Samaria on the way. Jesus, tired from the long walk, sat wearily beside the well at Sychar about noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." The woman was surprised, for Jews in that culture refused to have anything to do with Samaritans, and I'll explain that in a bit. She said to Jesus, "You're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink?" And Jesus replied, "If you knew the gift God has for you and who you were speaking to, you would be asking me for a drink." And that sets up this dialogue, because Jesus says, "I would give you living water." Now let me draw your attention to three different pieces. The first one is that the woman came to the well at noontime. And I don't know if you've ever been in that culture, but it's hot over there. And so women, they didn't have taps, so all the water had to be from the community well. You drew it, you carried it back on your head, and that got you through the day. But they would come in the early morning in the cool of the day. Because to come at noontime in the heat of the day was the stupidest idea for anybody carrying a heavy water pot. So that begs the question, why is this woman coming at noontime? She's coming because she knows nobody else will be there. That's the time there will be nobody to talk to, nobody around. She can get her water and get home. And why is that? Now here's where it starts to connect with some of you. We are told this woman had been married 5 times, and she was currently living with a 6th guy. So she had a lot of men in her life. Now you can imagine in a small village what everybody thought about her. Because she had probably stolen a few husbands from other people in the village. So the point becomes, she's going at noontime because everybody hates her. She is despised by all the women. And I'm pretty sure if she went in the morning when all the women were drawing their water, can you imagine the sneers they would give her? And the little shots they would take at her? And the digs? And the snobbery that they would express around her? It was too painful to go through. So she comes at noontime. Now you have to understand it in a Jewish context. This woman has 3 strikes against her as far as the Jewish religious leaders were concerned. So part of the reason that this story is told is that Jesus was considered to be a Jewish leader, a religious leader, and so they think he's going to view this woman like all the other religious leaders view her. So here's what she had against her. Number 1, she's a woman. Do you realize that every Jewish man, every day when he got up from bed, he prayed. He had a prayer, and he said, "God, I thank you that I am not a woman." He prayed that every day. Now, how would you like to be the wife of that? Okay, second thing, she was a Samaritan, and they hated Samaritans. And thirdly, she was considered immoral because she had all these marriages that had fallen apart, and she was living with a guy now. So all 3 of those things made her a very despised thing. Beyond that, the Jewish people hated the Samaritans. They saw them as a group of people who used to be Jews that married non-Jews and developed this half-breed race called the Samaritans. And so one of the things that they taught is that Samaritans were created by God to keep the fires of hell burning. So they despised Samaritans, but if you paid attention there, they thought God did too. And they thought God was sending them all to hell and he just couldn't wait to get rid of them. That was in their thinking. But it goes further. I got a little map to show you. So if you look there at the bottom, there's green, and then above it, it says Judea in a kind of a salmon color. Then above that, you see in blue Samaria, and then above that is Galilee, where Jesus was heading, okay? So if you were in the south and you had to go to Galilee, what you did is you went east. So you see the Dead Sea there, and then there's a river that goes up as a boundary on Israel, and then there's a little lake at the top. What the Jews would do is go across the river, go up the east side of the river in the green, and come back into Galilee, recrossing the river. They would not go into Samaria. So that's how much they hated those people. And so Jesus, the fact that he went into Samaria, talked to this woman who was a Samaritan and immoral, would have just blown everybody's brains out. They go, what is he thinking? Now there's a second thing I want you to notice. You notice that Jesus says, I want to give you living water. What he is saying and identifying is two things. Number one is he is saying there is a thirst that we experience that is physical. So we get thirsty for a glass of water. But there's a thirst that we experience that has nothing to do with water. It's a thirst that comes from another part of us. It's a thirst that is different. And most of you as an addict understand that thirst. It comes out of some place inside of you where there's an emptiness, but you long for something, and you try these different things to try to satisfy the thirst. So think of it this way. If you've been at Finding Freedom or React, you've heard the 12 needs being taught. And what it basically says is that we're all created with 12 needs. Some are physical needs, some are emotional needs, some are relational needs, and some are spiritual needs. If you look at the physical needs, we are created with a need for food, water, and a sexual drive. What I think, and this is my opinion, is that those three needs were given us to make us aware that we also have thirst that's outside of the physical. We have emotional thirst. We have relationship thirst. We have a spiritual thirst. And sex means we desire physical intimacy, but it was a sign pointing us to the fact that we also desire emotional intimacy. We desire spiritual intimacy. And so what Jesus is saying is you've got a thirst, but it's not a physical thirst. And then he takes it a step further, and he says basically this: that thirst in you, you've been trying to satisfy with men, and it hasn't been working for you. You've had this thirst that for you feels like a thirst to be loved. It feels like a thirst to be in a relationship with a man. And you've gone from relationship to relationship, and they haven't satisfied that thirst. Your track record shows that. I want to tell you, Jesus is saying, that thirst goes deeper than a physical, and it goes deeper than a human relationship thirst. You're actually thirsting for God. You have a thirst that only God can satisfy, and I happen to be the guy that can give you that water. And so what he is saying is, God made everybody with a thirst for him, and he wants to meet that thirst. He desires to meet that thirst. So that takes me to the last point, and that is Jesus said to his disciples, I have to go through Samaria. So I'm down in the south, I got to go to the north. He said, I have to go through Samaria. Like I told you, the Bible part that this is written in was written in the Greek language. That word for I have to go, it means I've got a divine appointment. And what he is saying is I'm not going there because I just want a shortcut. He's saying I want to go there, I have to go there, because there's somebody there who's thirsting for God, and I have to show them how. and I have to show up. And so what Jesus is saying to this woman is this: all of Israel might hate you. All of Israel might take a detour around you. All of Israel might look down on you and tell you God hates you. But I'm here telling you He doesn't. I'm here telling you He wants to satisfy your thirst for Him, and I can show you how. And He is making very clear that everybody else might see you like an outcast, and you might be told that God sees you as an outcast. You're not an outcast to God. God reaches out to the outcast. That's what His love is about. And you want to know what is very interesting to me? Jesus is leaving the south. That's where the religious Jews lived. That's where their capital, Jerusalem, was. After just another year or so, Jesus was going to just walk away from those people. And He was going to say to them, you guys are religious, you don't have a clue. You guys are so out of touch with God, you're not even connected to God. But you want to know who is open to God? It's the outcasts. And so I am devoting myself from now on to reaching those people who have a thirst and realizing it. And I'm going to help them diagnose that thirst so that they realize they're loved and they can come to enter that relationship. So there you go.